Rick Prescott here with Save the Beatles, and I am coming to you on Sunday night. This is November 5th, just a few days after Now and Then has been released. It's late Sunday night, and I'm kind of doing this spontaneously. I've got my son practicing piano in the background. I'm going to leave that in because I've discovered something important about Now and Then that is not in any of the press, and I haven't heard it mentioned anywhere at all. And let's start with this, that I thought I knew this track, or this song, I should say. I thought I knew the song from the Lost Lennon tapes. And I went back, because you can find all kinds of stuff on YouTube, but I wanted to go back to my original Lost Lennon tapes cassettes and see if I could actually find the original recording so that I would go back to what it actually sounded like on the radio when I heard it originally. And what I discovered was that it appears not to have been used, unless maybe a snippet somewhere that isn't mentioned by name, in the Lost Lennon tapes at all. However, I have had it, for many years since then on some sort of bootleg that I don't even know where I got it. And so I found that bootleg and I listened again to this song. Now, this would be a bootleg that was made way before the current version and way before even the sessions for Anthology. This is a bootleg that goes back 30 years. And so I listened to it again, and I discovered something that I had never noticed, and as I say, has never been mentioned in any of the coverage. And it's not insignificant. It's a fairly significant thing. And that is that John Lennon, when he recorded this demo, did not, as everyone has described, press record on a boombox or some sort of recording device sitting on his piano and then sing it into this boombox. He did not do that. And it's when you listen to the original demo, and if you listen, especially in headphones, but I don't even think you need headphones, you will realize very quickly that that demo is a sound-on-sound recording, which is to say, he recorded the piano part, possibly to a boombox or something like that, and then he rewound the tape and he played it back through some speakers, and he sang along with that recording, and that's the demo that we have. Now, the way to tell that, I started hearing noises that were like the microphone moving around, and the piano part continues in the background, even though the microphone is moving around. Then I realized that the piano part on this demo has a completely different sound to it than the vocal part of this demo. And so it's very clear that they're two separate layers. The piano layer and the vocal layer are separate, which means, among other things, that John Lennon was much more intentional about this song than has been portrayed. He had it developed to the point where he was trying to get some sort of ideas down, and he hadn't worked out all the lyrics because he kind of fumbles through some of them and leaves some little holes, and eventually he just lets the piano play as he's trying to either let it play out or figure out something else. It's hard to tell for sure. But the other thing is that there's that section in the middle where you can hear the microphone moving around and the piano keeps going. So there's no way for him to move the microphone other than bonking it with his head maybe or something like that while he's playing, which cannot be ruled out. However, when you get to the end of this demo, that is where it becomes incredibly obvious. So first of all, I'm going to play you this little snippet from the demo where you can hear the microphone moving while the piano keeps going. Because of you, and then you go away, and now you'll So I said he bumped it, but it really sounds like he moved it. It sounds like he put his hand on it and he moved it around. And I think the critical thing to realize is that those noises are not in the piano part. They don't affect the piano part. The piano part continues on behind that without being changed. So it's very clear that that's another layer. It's another layer of recording on top of the piano. So if you listen to it closely, and even not, you're going to hear that the piano has kind of a muffled sound because it's being played through speakers across the room, and he's got a microphone and he's recording into something. So his microphone is picking up the piano at the same time it's picking up his voice. And in this case, right at that spot, he is actually adjusting the microphone, or he's bumping it or something like that with his hand. Now, what are other possibilities? You always have to think of what are the other possibilities. The first of those is that that's something that's an artifact that got added after the fact, that's not part of the original recording. You can't rule that out. That whoever had the bootleg tape inadvertently added some noise. It doesn't sound like that to me. In fact, the quality of this bootleg is immaculate. It's very, very high quality. And so it doesn't really sound like that's the case. And then there's the question of, well, what if he just bumped it? What if he's playing the piano and he's singing and he just bumped, he leaned forward like I'm doing, and he bumped it. I think if that were the case, you would hear a change to the piano sound behind it. Everything would change. That would be embedded in both, and it doesn't sound like that to me. It sounds like it's something on top of that. The piano is unaffected and everything like that. So there are also a couple of cases that in the recording where his vocal, the rhythm of his vocal doesn't exactly match the piano. Now, that's important because when you're playing piano and you're singing at the same time, it's hard to it's not common to get them screwed up like that. But when you're listening to a recording and you're singing along with the recording, that's actually reasonably plausible. It happens all the time, especially in the case of a recording that isn't in a strict metronomic sense. It's not moving. It's kind of ebbing and flowing, and so he's following along with it. And he doesn't really care. He's just trying to get the ideas down. That's all. So now let's talk about the ending. I want to play the second thing, which is at the end. Same caveats apply. It could be something else. It could be the bootlegger. It could be, in this case, he might have recorded over or something like that. But it doesn't sound like that to me. What it sounds like is that the piano part has stopped in the background, and there's a noise in the foreground that is in the room where it is in the layer of the vocal. So you will hear the piano part cut out first, and then a sound, which might be a sigh, it might just be a shift or something like that. It's hard to tell what it is, but it's separate. And it's merely the fact that those are separate. If we're going to say that these happened when he was recording the demo, then it's just the part that they're separate that tells us that there are two layers. And this is what sealed it for me. So here is that. Now, why is this important? And why is this even meaningful for this discussion? And of course, it's all guesswork if you're outside of the inner sanctum. If you're outside of the Peter Jackson, Giles Martin, Paul McCartney inner sanctum, it's all guesswork. But I'm going to tell you this: if I'm right, and it's I am somebody who has done a ton of those sound-on-sound recordings. And when I was much younger, 40 years ago, before I had a 4-track cassette, I had two 2-track cassette recorders that were, I'd go back and forth. And I didn't play them through the speakers, like John has done. John has clearly played it through the speakers. I played them, I plugged the inputs in. So I got a little bit better results than that. But I did early on experiment with exactly what John would have done, and I was experimenting probably 3 or 4 years after he's doing that. So I'm not in the Dakota, I'm not world famous, I'm just some guy who's got some songs who wants to record them, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it. And it kind of sounds like what John was doing there too, is that he didn't really care about the quality, he just wanted to get the idea down, and this was the easiest way to do it. It was hard to sing and play at the same time, so he played it, and then he rewound it, and he played that back through the speakers, and he recorded his vocal. Now, back to why this is important. If you have both layers of that recording, so you've got the piano layer, which is one section of tape, and actually it would have to be a different tape, would be a different cassette altogether. Here, let me use my cassettes to demonstrate. One cassette has the piano on it, okay? The other cassette has the piano plus the vocal, okay? 2 separate cassettes. Now, that is a recipe for making it much, much easier to do what Peter Jackson did. In other words, you can take the piano part and you can analyze that, and you can use it mathematically to eliminate the piano from the vocal part, because you know what the piano sounds like. The piano sounds like is on this all by itself, and you can take that algorithmically to remove it and leave only whatever's not on here is what you leave on here. And that is how you can, without the use of, I mean, there's still artificial intelligence involved, but this is not something that is unheard of. It's, that's how they do karaoke tracks and things like that. In some cases, that's how you can do karaoke tracks. But also, that's a technology that's been around much longer. This obviously is a much higher level of that. So I'm not suggesting that Peter Jackson isn't using state-of-the-art technology. It's very clearly he is. But he may have had an advantage that we didn't realize and that nobody's talking about. Because, of course, how are they going to talk about it? It's complicated. And you don't care. Frankly, I don't even care. Except to have discovered this, I feel like it's important. I feel like it's important to know. And that is, the original recording, the original demo recording that Paul and Peter Jackson started with was in fact a sound-on-sound recording, which means somewhere there's a tape that has just the piano on it. And if you use those two together, it's a lot easier to extract the vocal. All right, now I want to reiterate something that I said earlier, and I just touched on, and I just want to bring it back. And that is, it's one thing for a songwriter to be trying to get an idea down in the moment. You're writing the song and you just have your tape recorder going, and whatever comes out, and there will be, your fingers won't necessarily hit where you want, but you don't really care, and your voice may not do what you want, but you don't really care because you're just trying to get the idea down. That's one layer, and there are lots of John Lennon demos from that era that fit into that pattern, where he just turned on the tape recorder and you could just tell he's just putting ideas down, or he's been playing around and he's decided, okay, now I've got enough that I want to record that. That's one level. It's a second level altogether when you have gotten far enough that you want to record the piano part separately, because you've got kind of a structure, and you've got chord progressions, and you kind of know how it's all going to be put together. And then either you have the vocal idea or you want to work on the vocal idea. So either he's already had the vocal idea for the song, or he's just played this out because he likes this music and he's going to see if he can put any words to it, or if he can put anything to it. Now, when I listen to this, to my ear, he has thought about this before he started. So this feels like an intentional process to me, that he intentionally recorded the piano part, knowing that he was going to come back and record a vocal over that. And that when he got to the vocal, he had most of it worked out. He didn't have all of it worked out, but he had most of it, because he does words here and there, and he kind of bluffs through some stuff. But for the most part, if you're going to do it that way, you're going to have had some planning go into it. You're going to have thought about it. And I just point this out because it means that this song was farther along than we typically think, that we have been led to think in this process. I don't think this was as much of a sketch as it tends to get portrayed. I think this was more complete than we typically think. Now, there are other considerations here, but that's the first one, is that I think this song was farther along in the composition process than some of the other things. Real Love was a complete song, we know that, and Free as a Bird was not quite complete. And of the three, this is probably the least complete they started with. So, George's approach seems pretty smart. It's kind of, there's not much there, but there's enough there, and there's enough that it's not just a raw idea. John has worked it out. All right, now let's go back to the very beginning and say, I didn't think I was going to make a video about Now and Then, and the reason I didn't think I was going to make a video was because, well, everybody's making videos, everybody's talking about it, and I kind of wanted to let it sink in. Even if I ever decided to make a video, I kind of wanted to let it sink in. It's a big deal. And it really is a meaningful moment for Beatles fans. And by bringing this up, I don't really want to diminish that at all. I think it just explains. It just helps explain how they did what they did. And it doesn't detract from the beauty of it. at all. It's a beautiful piece of work, regardless of what you think of the song or what you think of the arrangement or what you think of the recording. And I guess because I've thought about all of these things, I'm going to make some videos about these things. I'm going to talk about Now and Then for a little while here, because it really does, there's so much on there. I made another little discovery when I listened to that demo, which I'm not going to spoil here, and I will give it in another video. So, thanks for watching, and join me again on the Save the Beatles channel. My name is Rick Prescott.